Good evening and welcome to Varsity Maine Live from the Portland Press Herald. I am Travis Lazarczyk. Tonight I am joined on the panel by, from the Sun Journal, Nate Fournier, and from the Kennebec Journal Morning Sentinel, Mike Mandell. Guys, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Our guest tonight is a longtime head girls ice hockey coach for the Cheverus co-op team. Right now he has his team in first place in the South Division with a 14-1 record. They have a big game Saturday at Yarmouth-Freeport. Please welcome Scott Rousseau. Scott, thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me, Travis.
Let's talk about that game coming up first. Great game when you first played them about a month ago at Traub Arena. It was a 3-2 win for you guys. Just kind of break down the matchups for us a little bit between you guys and the Yarmouth-Freeport club.
Well, they have a little bit more depth than we do. They're probably the only team on the girls' side that can play three lines. They really took it to us early. They got pucks deep and really forechecked us in a way that we hadn't seen really up to that point that season. But we got a really strong game in goal by Ella Lemieux. She really, especially at the beginning of the game, made a few big saves and kept us in it. And we were able to get a few timely goals late. Michaela Talbot had a hat trick that game and really kind of springboard her season. She was struggling a little bit prior to that game. So, kind of stole one a little bit. I thought for large stretches they were better than us for much of the night, but we were able to show some resiliency and character to get that win.
What has been the your guys' focal point this year? To have the start that you guys have had this year.
A lot of balance, Nathan. When you Chris Ledwick, who's a good friend of mine, the coach of Brunswick High, said, Scott, I watch your team and there's nobody that really scares me. There's no one player that says we have to do everything to stop that player. You just have a lot of good across the board. I think our strength is actually our defense and our team defense. We have Bryn McKenney and Lily Johnson, who's hurt right now, but those two defensemen, juniors, are all-state caliber players, and one of them is on the ice all the time. They really control the game for us. And it gives us a lot of chance to get out of our zone easy and, get pucks deep. And, we have a really good cycle game. We have a good puck possession game. Right now we're getting a lot of balance. I think of all our six forwards that play, every player has between 17 is our leading scorer, and every forward has at least 8 goals. So we're getting a lot of balance. And, the kids are buying in, understanding that you score because it's your turn. You're the right player at the right place at the right time, and everybody has a night that works for them, but pretty unselfish. I think we only have 5 goals this year that are unassisted. So we're getting good puck movement, we're getting really good team play, and a lot of unselfish play.
Scott, on a general hockey level, we talked before the show about all these co-ops in hockey, and it's pretty wild in my opinion. You look at what we're dealing with here locally in Central Maine with the Black Tigers co-op. That's pretty much every school in Kennebec County. It's interesting because you go into some of this year not knowing, who you're going to be with or what the teams. And high school sports is about program building as a coach. What are the challenges, maybe not specifically with your team, or maybe it has been with your team, I don't know, that arise when you don't know what it's going to look like from year to year, who's going to be with you and who's not going to be with you?
Well, hockey's a bit unique, Mike, in that we don't really grow up playing for our town teams. When my children are young and they were playing soccer, youth softball or baseball, you played for the town against all the other towns in your area. Hockey is generally a regional sport. So all our kids, in this area are playing for Castaway Youth Hockey, for Gladiators in Lewiston, for the Maine Moose in your area. So the kids are pretty used to, having melting pots of players and coming together team-wise. So that's not an issue. Me, I'm a little bit unique, unlike other public schools, just because I really don't know what's coming from year to year. At Cheverus, I'll start finding out here in the next month or two. Other than my daughter, who's enrolled for next year, I don't know who's attending next year. So that's pretty normal for us. On the public school side, they do have a middle school league in the Southern Maine. So most of those coaches have an idea generally who should be coming. And their middle schools generally mimic the same co-ops that their high school teams are. So for hockey, I think we're kind of used to blending pretty easily. I think the other advantage we have, Mike, is, we don't operate out of the school. We're not in the gym. We operate out of the rink. And that's where the kids are used to being, and that's where the coaches are used to being. So when you get to the rink, you're just there. And once you're there, most of the coaches aren't teachers, so it's irrelevant to me that Marina Friedman came from Kennebunk that morning. She's at the rink, and she's got her practice jersey on, and we're playing. So I think it's a testament to the kids that really, they don't mind. They work around it because they just want to play.
Scott, are you seeing more kids coming up through in the youth hockey levels? And, if so, what do we got to do to keep them playing when they get to high school?
That's an interesting question, Travis. So for Casco Bay Youth Hockey, that, I was the longtime vice president for, and I get to see the numbers. There are more girls playing hockey in Casco Bay Youth Hockey this year than in any year in their history. And that's the same for every year post-COVID. Little girls are playing hockey now at 6 years old, 7 years old, 8 years old, like they play every other sport. What we're not getting, I think, is some later players arriving to hockey, and players that just stop playing, either because the higher end talent feels they have to move on to more competitive programs, or in the post-COVID world, I think a lot of kids just stop playing sports in general. You're seeing a lot of numbers decline in sports across the board, not just hockey. But hockey's numbers are a little tighter, and so we end up co-op. We're seeing a lot of similarities in football. And even in soccer, you're seeing eight-player soccer now in small schools. So I think the issues in hockey are a little exasperated because they're a little bit different and specialized. Tough to put on skates and learn to skate. The skating skill makes hockey so unique, whereas kids can pick up a basketball, play soccer, pick up softball, at the high school level and round out teams if they're good athletes. Pretty tough to pick up hockey if you haven't been playing. And so that's kind of what we're seeing right now.
Scott, just looking at the standings in general on both sides of the North and South, it seems like, as usual, 1 or 2 teams in each region, dominating, but it seems like more teams are bunched together in competitive in wins-loss record this year. Is there any specific reason that you see as a coach for that?
I don't know, Nate. Sometimes things are a little cyclical. I think, if you look at back, for instance, in 2019 when we won, I thought that there was more talent, and the teams then were very, very strong. Much stronger via the teams. There's a level of sinusoidal waves. If you do this long enough, you see the league sometimes has more talent and sometimes has less talent. I think we're in a bit of a down period, and there are varied reasons. I think COVID's part of that for sure. That the teams generally are not as strong, particularly in the senior class. The senior and junior classes right now are not as strong as they've been in years past. And so I think that has kind of leveled the playing field. You're even looking at the success that we've been at Yarmouth. It's not like we're blowing every team out, 6, 7, 8 to 1 with juggernaut offensive talent. We're grinding out a lot of 4 to 1 wins like we had against Mount Ararat last night. 5 to 1 against Gorham. So I think that the lack of real high-end talent in the senior and junior class has kind of brought everyone together and created a lot of parity.
Anything else from you, Mike?
No, I think I'm good.
All right. Well, Scott, I appreciate you coming tonight. Good luck the rest of the season. And we'll probably be seeing you in the playoffs.
Look forward to it, Charles. Thanks for having me. Have a good
All right. And Scott Rousseau, the head coach of the Cheverus girls co-op team. We have athletes of the week. So I will click over to those. We'll start with Sierra Carson, Oxford Hills girls basketball. She helped the Vikings earn wins over 2 of the top teams in the state by scoring 15 points against Cheverus on Saturday and 15 more against Bangor on Tuesday. Peyton Mitchell from Mount Abram boys basketball. He racked up 21 points in an overtime win over Mountain Valley, then scored a game-high 25 in a loss to Dirigo. Mike Mandell, it wasn't long ago that the Roadrunners were kind of suffering a long tournament drought, but at 8-3, they look poised to head back to the Augusta Civic Center. What can you tell us about Peyton and the Mount Abram basketball team?
Well, I had the chance to see both of them the first week of the season. I had a chance to see two Mount Abram games in the first month of the season. The first week against Monmouth, and again in that Augusta Holiday tournament against Halldale. Peyton, he didn't have his best scoring night against Monmouth, but played good defense and got a lot of rebounds. And then he was one of the top scorers in that Halldale games. And you're right, recently it seems like he's reached another level with the 25 against Deergo in that close game, and 21 against Mountain Valley. And he's a major reasons that the Roadrunners, two of whose 3 defeats this year have come to that state championship Deergo team, both games by 5 points or fewer, are looking to be a pretty dangerous team in February. You're right. It's a team that hasn't necessarily been strong historically, especially in recent years with that tournament drought you mentioned. But they've shown that they could play with the best. And I think they're going to be pretty dangerous as we head into the next couple weeks.
All right, Mike. Thank you. Michaela Talbot's hat trick helped the Cheverus Co-op team take a 4-1 win over the Mount Ararat Co-op team in girls hockey. Scott just mentioned that game. Ashton LeClaire, Gorham boys basketball, the junior guard, scored 23 points as the Rams routed host Bonnie Eagle 83-46 Tuesday. Gorham was coming off an upset win against Thornton Academy, the top team in the AA South Heel Point standings. Brunswick's Dakota Shipley scored 25 points with 12 rebounds in the Dragons' 42-37 victory over Falmouth on Tuesday. Henry McCourt, Mount Blue Nordic Skiing, he won the 1964 skier Miranda Cook fun race at Titcomb Mountain in Farmington with a time of 16 minutes, 23.8 seconds. That was 31 seconds ahead of the rest of the field. Cole Pulkkinen from Oxford Hills boys basketball, the Vikings senior guard, scored 32 points in an impressive 75-42 win Saturday at Cheverus. He had 16 in a tough 48-45 win at Bangor. Oxford Hills is atop the league standings with a 12-1 record. Maddie Fitzpatrick had 15 points and 19 rebounds, while Emma Lazat had 24 points and 10 rebounds in the Cheverus girls basketball team's 49-35 win over previously unbeaten Thornton Academy on Wednesday. Charlie Houghton, Deergo boys basketball. Houghton continued a strong play with 33 points, including a 10-for-11 effort at the line in the unbeaten Cougars' 72-54 win against Winthrop on Saturday. Nate, Deergo's 14-0. We talked about Mount Abram maybe being a contender in Class C South, but Deergo, the defending state champs, are still the team to beat, aren't they?
Yeah, it looks like it. I mean, they're, I believe, as you said, undefeated. Seemed like a three-headed monster, this year with Charlie, Dakota Tompkins, Nathaniel Rainwright. It seems like they always average, those 3 guys always average double digits in points, and they're just a juggernaut this year. I think the only games this year, the 2 that we've talked about with Mount Abram, other than that, they've been beating their opponents, by double digits points. They're just a veteran squad here, this year with the championship experience.
Okay, Nate, thank you. North Yarmouth Academy's Sarah English had 28 points and 16 rebounds in the Panthers' 62-19 victory over Socopee Valley on Tuesday. Brunswick's A.J. Wolverton scored both the Dragons' goals, including the game winner in overtime in a 2-1 boys hockey win over Thornton on Saturday. And finally, Colbin Dunphy, Westbrook boys basketball, the 6'3" senior guard, came close to a triple-double in Tuesday's 67-47 win in Biddeford, scoring 21 points with 8 rebounds and 10 assists. He also had 4 steals as the Blue Blazers improved to 11-2 in Class A South. So congratulations to all our athletes of the week. We have polls. We'll start this week with girls basketball. Number 1 this week, Oxford Hills, getting 7 of the first place votes for 79 points. Number 2, Bangor with 65 points. Number 3, Thornton Academy, getting a first place vote. Despite that loss to Cheverus the other night, the poll came out before the game was played. They have 65 points. Number 4, Cheverus at 52. And number 5, Gardner with 50 points. Mike, Gardner's pretty under the radar for an undefeated team. Just kind of tell us what they look like in a KVAC North.
Well, I mean, they're pretty clear favorites at this point in A North. There are obviously some good teams, and Lawrence is obviously very good with that veteran group. And Coney, which will play Gardner in a game I'll get into here in a couple minutes. It has also been up there, but really Gardner just has it all starts with Lizzie Gruber, and then they've assembled a team around her that really just kind of suits her skill set well and really complements her to at 6'4", she's going to draw most of the attention, but you need something else when she's double teamed, and they have that perfectly in players like Megan Gallagher, Emily Brown, Taylor Takatsu, to really break through when they need it. And we'll see how they stack up in the North. I know there's a lot of expectation this year, but so far they've handled it pretty well. They've lived up to it.
All right, thanks, Mike. Girls ice hockey poll, we have Cheverus co-op team with all 7 first-place votes and 35 points. Number 2, Yarmouth-Freeport with 27 points. That game we'll talk about a little bit later also. Number 3, Penobscot at 22 points. Number 4, Brunswick with 7 points. Number 5, Lewiston with 6 points. Nathan, I'll ask you, Lewiston won the last 2 state titles. Are they just kind of flying under the radar there, waiting for their shot, or is this maybe going to be a tougher road for them in the playoffs here when they start soon?
I think it's a mixture of both. You just never know. I think the thing with them is they probably have one of the better goaltenders of the state, Kim McLaughlin. She's really shown her skills this year after the past couple of years having a great team in front of her. She didn't need to make a lot of saves. This year she's had 2 50 save performances against Penobscot, the Panthers, in losses, but over one game over 60 shots, and she made 59 saves. And another game she had 50 saves in the rematch in a losing effort. So if she gets hot, the Lewiston can win any game, 2-1, 1-0, those type of games. They just don't have the depth in the previous 2 state championship teams, which may make it difficult for them in the playoffs.
Okay, thank you, Nate. Boys ice hockey poll. Brunswick in first place with 6 first-place votes and 33 points, although it looks like they might have lost tonight. They were down 2-0 to Cape Elizabeth with about a minute to go. Number 2, Falmouth picks up the other first-place vote with 28 points. Number 3, Edward Little with 16 points. They're tied with Thornton for 3rd. And number 5, Messalonski at 9 points. Nathan, I'll go back to you. Tell us about this Edward Little team.
They might be one of the teams that I think in Class A. They just have veterans up and down the board. Starts with goaltending. Gage Ducharme is that experience for the past 3 years, or 4 years, I should say, dating back to his freshman year when he helped Edward Little to a deep run in his freshman year. They got a lot of veterans up front. Campbell Cassidy, their go-to guy, but they got definitely around him, and Peyton Dyer, Tate Morris, Andrew Clements. So up front, they got a lot of firepower, and and defensively, they're solid. They lost a few players last year, but from last year's team, but they are just have replaced those guys very well. They just beat St. John's last night 3-2 in a back and forth contest in overtime, and I think the game will help them, down the stretch here, in those tight games, because as we've seen in boys hockey, anybody can beat anybody this year.
Okay, thank you. Finally, we have boys basketball, and we have the rare tie for first place. Number 1 is Brewer with 4 first-place votes, and Oxford Hills with 3 first-place votes. Number 3, Lewiston picks up the other first-place vote, and they're followed by Thornton Academy in Portland. Mike Mandell, Brewer is pretty much the clear favorite in Class A North. I was looking at the standings with our colleague Drew Bonifant the other day in the office, and it looks like 2 through 6, shake them up and throw them in a hat and pick them out, because any one of those teams can beat anybody else on any night.
Yes. However, Brewers been challenged a lot more recently. They just played a couple an overtime game or two. So it's not they're still the clear favorite, but it might not be the formal coronation in a North that I think a lot of people might have been expecting at this time a month or so ago. But you're right, between Coney, Nokomis, Mount Blue, all those teams are right there. Skowhegan, now that their football players who were injured at the start of the year are back and healthy, have been a tough out. There's a lot of teams right there with them. Messalonsky, you can throw them in. They just beat Coney the other night. And they're not a team you're going to want to play in the playoffs. So you're right. It's a hodgepodge of teams right there that are going to make it. It's going to make for some good games at the ACC next month.
Yeah, Messalonsky is one of those teams you mentioned took Brewer to overtime, and of course you can't count out Lawrence that seems to be playing well too.
Yes, that's right. Dane Zawistowski has become an elite 3-point shooter. Connor Nutting's been good, and then they were able to match. They were able to pretty close to matching Winslow on the board in the game Tuesday I covered there. That was a game against a good. I know Winslow's a Class B team, but they're very good. Lawrence just couldn't get the lead at the end, but they stuck right with them. And if they, assuming they break through, this is going to be their first winning season. I think since 2016. So that's a team on the up. So you'll have to watch out for them as well.
Okay, thank you. Games that we're looking at coming up, guys. I'll start with that Cheverus Yarmouth Freeport girls game. It's going to be at 3:20 at Travis Roy Arena on Saturday afternoon. These are the two first-place teams in North and South. They had a great game in Portland earlier in January, a 3-2 Cheverus win. Cheverus dealing with some injuries in goal and on the blue line right now, but that should be a great game. Nate, what game are you looking forward to?
I'm looking forward to the Messalonsky John Bapt's co-op boys hockey game. The two top teams in Class B North. Messalonsky, as we just found out, if the Brunswick score it held them losing 2-0, is the lone remaining seeded team in boys hockey. So I'm looking forward to this matchup between like I said, the two top teams in B North. I'm interested to see how John Baptist does. They lost their Bangor Class A team, but they've also, beaten, Presque Isle, another contender in Class B North. So I'm interested to see how they do against Messalonsky, who seems to be rolling here in the first half of their season, being 8-0 here, 8-0 right now.
Okay, thank you. Mike, how about you?
A few on my radar, Travis. First of all, I'm covering that Messalonsky John Baptist game on Saturday. That'll be fun. Tomorrow, the night before, though, I'll be in Augusta to cover Mount Blue at Coney Boys, which is a rematch of a game Coney won earlier this year in Farmington. However, Mount Blue was winning one of the best players here in Central Maine, in Evan Sterling. Cougars been pretty solid with their only 2 losses in 2023 coming in tight games against Brewer and Nokomis. Coney, on the other hand, 1-4 in its last 5. This is a great chance for a bounce-back win at home. Tuesday, Gardner at Coney girls basketball. Like I just mentioned, the Tigers have been every bit the juggernaut we thought they were going to be. In their that first game, they throttled Coney 70-45. Now it's the rematch time, and since then, Coney is 10-1 and is riding a 9-game winning streak in a new head coach Don Detta's first year. Morgan Cunningham's played great basketball for Coney. She's a great 3-point shooter, and of course, Lizzie Gruber's doing Lizzie Gruber things for Gardner. So that's a big one. And of course, it's Coney Gardner. It's a big rivalry. And then Nate was just talking about Lewiston girls hockey on Wednesday. Next Wednesday, they play the Black Tigers at home. The Black Tigers, Central Maine's co-op team, very likely they'll be heading into this match at 9-5 and looking for their 10th win against upcoming games against Edward Little and Greeley Gray New Gloucester, which are combined 1-27. Katie Berard for the Black Tigers is a phenom. 22 goals in 12 games as a freshman this year. We just talked about with Scott Rousseau's mentioning how the freshmen and sophomores have kind of carried girls hockey this year. And then Lewiston, who Nate just talked about, is only 6th in the Northern Maine rankings, but at the same time, they didn't really have any bad losses. So a big game that could have big seeding implications, and a victory could go a long way for both teams.
I think Lizzie Gruber Things would be a great name for a band. Okay. That's going to do it this week for us on Varsity Maine Live. I'd like to remind you to check out varsitymaine.com for all the best high school sports coverage in Maine. For Mike, for Nate, for Scott, I'm Travis. Thanks for joining us this week on Varsity Maine.